So, Michael Jackson died in 2009. Yes, 2009. And at the time, it's reported that the estate was $500 million in debt. Now, we won't get into that, at least not right now. But at this point in time, the estate of Michael Jackson is now worth $3.5 billion. And with the opening of the Michael movie, it has now set the record for the highest grossing biopic ever. We need to talk about what Michael did while he was alive that is paying him while he's not, and what you can do as well. My name is Stephanie D. McKenzie. I'm your favorite fractional coach, brand strategist, and all the things. And you are currently watching Breaking the Brand. Yes, we finally have a name. And so for your lunchtime learning delight, we're going to get into the whole Michael Jackson of it all. This past weekend, I went to see the Michael movie, but as a long-term diehard fan of the King of Pop, I have to tell you, it was an amazing movie. I'll just say that I am definitely team no spoilers. And so I want to invite you to go see it yourself. I think Jafar did an amazing job. You know, we walked into this not knowing what to expect. I have to tell you, I wept through This Is It. Like I wept through the entire movie. In fact, I weep every time I see it. So that being said, there are so many lessons that we want to get into that Michael Jackson has left for us, believe it or not. Um, on this channel, we talk about a lot of current events and celebrity fails and even celebrity wins that can impact you if you're a founder, a business owner, or a leader. And so today is no different. And so I've got oodles, I got a whole cornucopia with notes, people, of things that you can learn. So, guys, as you're checking in, please drop your comments, say hello. I work to convert positive brand equity into peak profitability daily. I like to say that we are absolutely responsible for making founders and folks' dreams come true. You don't have to be a founder. You might be a business owner or a leader. So, by all means, make sure that you check us out. I also want to tell you that if you love my glasses, you know the routine. Go to buymyzennies.com. Boom, buymyzennies.com. And as usual, today's live stream is brought to you by the COE. I have another class coming up. We need to update that, guys, on the 22nd of May, which is how you might be silently sabotaging your business. So you might want to check into that. That should go live today. And also brought to you by Tractionista.com as well as blackmoonrituals.com. Man, it is so awesome to be supported. Can I just say that? Can I just say that? It really is awesome to be supported. And, I find a lot of times that foundership is this weird space, business ownership, entrepreneurship, and truthfully, they're all different things, right? And I already taught that class, but it requires things of you that you may not know that you even have or can do. But one of the things that it really requires is to be supported. And I am so totally privileged to lead a group called Founder Mind. And we're going to start some new cohorts, different times, different days. And so if you want to learn more about what we do and what we can do for you, comment founder below, because Founder Mind is a place where you can come, you can spaghetti wall, spitball, burn it down, and even build it back up within 90 minutes. And so we're in the middle of a 8-week session right now, and then we'll go back into a 4-week sprint. It's a really amazing experience no matter where you are. If you're having a great week, you can come and get supported. If you're having a sucky week, you can come and get supported. But anyway, it's great to be supported. So let's talk about these things that Michael Jackson did that are relevant to you as a founder, no matter what stage you're in, be it early stage or growth stage. Oh, good. I am not muted. Woohoo! Ever since that happened that one time, I've been like, check the mic, Stephanie, check the mic. So one of the things that we know about Michael Jackson is that he absolutely obsessively rehearsed. He didn't want anything to go out that was not of the caliber and the standard that he had set for what he wanted to put out into the world, the work, the music, everything that he was putting out into the world, the images, right? He wanted it to be at a certain standard. And the lesson that many founders can take from that is to stop having quality blindness. Now we're going to dig a little more deeply into that, but I think a lot of times there's a time when you can say done is better than perfect. But then there's also a time when, you hold that in that. I won't even say it's a separate time. In that, holding that line, saying, you know what, done is better than perfect, but what's done needs to be done at a level that I am in alignment with, that I am okay with. Like, I find nothing more challenging than things leaving our office, our emails, etc., that either don't look exactly the way that I wanted them to look, um, or that don't communicate what I want them to communicate. So, case in point, at one point in time, we hired a social media company to put out posts for us because I don't know if you know this, but some of you, most of you, are not social media experts. Myself, I am not a social media expert. I am a content educator, but I'm not a social media expert, nor do I profess to be. And so we hired a company. And so invariably, every time they put something out, I would get a notification on LinkedIn and it would say, oh, so and so liked your post. I'm like, okay, cool. I would go look at the post. The post was completely off brand. Yes, it had the right colors. Yes, it had the right fonts. Yes, it had an image completely off brand. And I'm like, I told the company, how am I out here saying I'm a brand strategist and I can put your stuff together and we're end to end? Like, we don't just do ideation, we do implementation as well, right? And I'm like, how am I out here saying that I'm these things when you're putting out things that are not in alignment with the standard? Where I literally go into LinkedIn and delete what you posted because it is such a debrand. I'm going to use the word again of what we put out, of the messages that we want out in the world that are representing this organization. And ultimately, I have to be honest, we ended up taking that back in house and now they just end up scheduling and we don't let them handle any of the creative. And some of you get this. And I know somebody listening is going to say, yeah, that's why I do everything myself. No, 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 no. That story is not an excuse to do everything yourself. That story is the reason why you want to hold people to a certain standard. Some of you are doing everything yourself and it's still not to a particular standard. Remember, at the end of the day, brand is about expectations. Expectations you set, expectations that you've met. And so if people can expect you to be all over the place, what nobody is going to tell you to your face is that inconsistency creates mistrust. So when you are inconsistent, people are not going to tell you, oh my God, I don't trust you. They're just not going to buy. Or they're going to invalidate your value proposition. So they'll be like, oh, well, you're inconsistent, but you know what? This is on sale, so I'll buy it. Because now your prices are actually at the level that I think they should be because your visuals and your value proposition, yeah, they're not aligned. They're not aligned, y'all. And I'm just on the first one and I need to say this to the founder that's sitting there going, but Stephanie, but Stephanie, but Stephanie. And I'm like, listen, I love Canva. I love that it's giving people the opportunity to create and to put out information, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're not a graphic designer, don't let Canva tank your commas because it will. It absolutely will. Truthfully, most times when we use Canva, we template ourselves. It's very rare that we use a Canva template unless there's something in particular that I need laid out, like a list or something. And, the spacing's already done. It saves us some time. But ultimately, we're templating ourselves because we're setting a standard here. We're setting a standard. And the reason why we're setting a standard is because we want to be able to charge everything from $97 to $9,700 and above, and nobody flinches. If you're all over the place, you're invalidating your value by way of your visuals, and you're creating mistrust in the eyes of your current and possibly future consumers. Fix it. Fix it. So, as I told you before in my intro, Michael Jackson's estate has now earned $3.5 billion since his death. Billion. I didn't say million, I said billion. What does that mean? That means that for founders who are wanting to be revenue generating, because some of y'all don't. Stephanie, what do you mean I'm in business to make money? I can't tell. You spend more time creating than you do converting. You haven't talked to not one person about the strategy that you're on, except AI. And that's cute if you know how to prompt AI to get valid strategies out of it. But you haven't sat with anyone like myself, any of my colleagues to understand, you know what, is this the direction I need to go in? Or am I just following a checklist that somebody put out for $17? See, the great thing about working with somebody, especially somebody like myself who actually has a knowledge base and isn't just regurgitating stuff that I've heard over and over and over in some MLM or what some coach told me to say, is that we can create strategies that are made for you, that take you into account, that take into account your capabilities and your limitations, that take into account your core competencies and your non in your core incompetency. And that's why it's imperative that you at least get to somebody. It doesn't have to be me. I don't really care. Get help somewhere and talk to somebody whose first business was not their coaching practice and they're telling you that they did six figures in the last hour. That's why they're offering you a framework. That's why they're offering everybody the same framework because they don't know what they're doing. The person that tells you the outcome you're going to get and they haven't met you nor assessed where you are is lying to you. Here's my 33-step strategy to eight-figure months. And I keep bringing that up because it actually happened. I think I kept the DM where somebody slid in and I'm like, 33 steps, sir, the way my ADHD, OCD, and so many other letters after my name are set up, you lost me after step 1.7. But you don't know anything about me. You don't know what stage my business is in. You don't know my core competencies. You don't know my core incompetencies. You don't know my limitations. You don't know any of these things, but you swear, Girl Scouts honor, that your 33-step process is going to bring me to eight-figure months. How, Sway? Because if you know, like I know, there have to be certain things, and foundationally, those things have to be set up in your business. But what people aren't talking about is the mindset necessary in order to even conceive an eight-figure month. There are so many people that can't even conceive that. I remember sitting down with a woman showing her how she could make $10,000 a month with what she had. She tells me the number of people on her email list. She tells me what she has to offer. She tells me what she can do. This is back when I had an office. I wrote it all down on the whiteboard. I said, you at minimum could make 10K a month. To this day, she hadn't done anything I said. And this is just what she had. I didn't pull anything out. I didn't say, oh, you have to do this. Oh, da da da. Because, a lot of times people are like, post more, do this. Truthfully, posting more is not the answer. A lot of times the answer is engaging more. But that's a whole different lesson, right? But honestly, your business should be able to earn without you. A lot of times we call this passive income. And I do understand as somebody who stays focused on their business, right? And looking at it and saying, okay, here's what we have, here's what we brought in, here's what people are aligning with, et cetera, et cetera. There was a time when I said, okay, Stephanie, I'm going to get that passive income going, sell those courses, sell those ebooks, et cetera, et cetera. And that lasted for a moment. And then I got a client, active income. And so then I had to go to work. However, it is imperative that you consider how you generate revenue apart from yourself. As one of my good friends says, I just want you, this is her mimicking me. Y'all have to see it. It's hilarious. I just want you to not have to touch the people. And I don't. I don't want you to have to touch anyone, talk to anyone, teach anyone, tell anyone in order to generate revenue. But in order to do that, systems must be in place. And foundationally, you must also be in a place. As a founder, your foundation, your mentality has to align with the fact that you are worthy of generating money you don't have to quote unquote work for. You're worthy of being compensated. Say it with me. Worthy. Back to Michael Jackson, right? Quincy Jones in his book, I can't remember what it was called. If anybody remembers, I drew a blank. But anyway, Quincy Jones wrote a book. The late great Quincy Jones wrote a book. And he said that Michael was very detail obsessed and disciplined. Detail obsessed and disciplined. And I said something earlier, right? There's this phrasing that says done is better than perfect, right? Done is better than perfect. And so there's a fine line between gaslighting yourself into perfection and understanding that this thing that we have done is at a level of excellence. See, our goal should be excellence, not perfection, because perfectionism, first of all, is a trauma response, but also can lead to analysis paralysis. I know oodles of business owners, founders, leaders who can't move from where they are because it's not perfect. I'm like, how's it going to get perfect? What is perfect? Because the thing about perfectionism is that you're constantly moving the goalpost. Well, when I get here, and then you get here. Well, when I get here, and then you get there. Well, when I do this, and it's like, okay, but you keep moving the goalpost. You're kind of like, who's the character? Is it Charlie Brown that goes to kick the ball and she pulls the ball away? That's you gaslighting yourself into perfectionism. Because what you're really saying is, I don't believe this is good enough. I don't believe I'm good enough. And so you hold yourself hostage to a level of perfection that doesn't even exist, so that you get the validation of doing the work, but you don't have to engage in the initiation and the implementation of getting the results. No, I can't say that again. I hope you caught it when I said it. So what I want to encourage you to be is, yes, be disciplined and be detail obsessed to the point of excellence. To the point of excellence, because perfectionism doesn't exist. It really doesn't. Even now, like, listen, as much as I would love for one of our clients, like we have to put out an exorbitant amount of content for them and information for them. And sometimes we don't nail it. That's what comes with that comes with it. We don't always nail it. It's not always perfection. It was excellent when it went out. It checked all the boxes. But this morning I get an email that says, "Oh, I didn't like this. It was weird." Okay. Noted. Because see, in all things there's learning that happens, right? A lot of times people think, "Oh, well, when you work with somebody, they're going to get it right and they're going to make it great," and they should. But that doesn't mean there won't be points where, you know what, that kind of didn't go the direction that we wanted it to go. And that's okay. That's okay. Like grace and space, my dear. But the perfection, yeah, it's not happening. Yeah. It's a goalpost that's constantly moving. It's a moving target you'll never hit. And if some of you would be truthfully honest with yourself, you would see how perfectionism is a thing that's holding you back. Not a strategy, although you probably need a better one, but shameless plug for myself and my team, but you probably need a better strategy. You definitely might need a community and be supported. Another shameless plug. Come on into Founder Mind. Let's talk. But truthfully, it's the perfectionism. And I will say this. I spoke with somebody and they recently said, "Yeah, when I get my stuff together, I'm going to come see you." That's the wrong attitude to have. Bring the messy, because the person that knows what they're doing can take your messy and create the message. If you could get it together, it'd be together already and we'd be having a different conversation. So if you're telling me you're going to get your messy together and then come see me when you don't have a mess anymore, all that's telling me is I'm going to have more work to do. And that's also telling me that you're putting the screws to yourself and saying, "I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I've got to do this." I'm like, "No, you don't. Get on the calendar. Come messy. Come confused. Come unclear." Y'all, I've been running businesses for decades, y'all, and I've launched my own, I've ran my own, and I've even run a few of my own into the ground, not our clients, just my own, because that's how we learn. Plus, I think at that point I was like 16, I think 16. No, I probably was 20 when I ran it into the ground. So it's like you're supposed to do it. That's how you learn. And so you get to learn from my mistakes because I didn't start doing this yesterday. I didn't start doing this out of the MLM space. And no shade to MLM people, but MLM people who have never launched a business do not know what that is. And I know MLMs tell you, oh, you're launching your own business, but you're not. You're basically launching a franchise. Somebody else has created the foundational principles. They've done all the research, the psychographics, the demographics, the marketing. And so you are putting your own spin into the franchise, like a Chick-fil-A. It's like a Chick-fil-A. So you're not doing all of that foundational work, which is very, 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 very necessary. Don't gaslight yourself out of that. So, in an interesting, I had to do a lot of research to do this because I knew some things, but I didn't want to come to you guys and be like, well, I think I allege, well, I didn't want to do that, right? So something that I found that was so interesting about Michael Jackson is that he has sold more albums since transitioning than he did in the last 12 years of his life. 13.1 in the last 12 years, 13.2 since 2009. I think it's fascinating. And I truly believe, part of the reason why I'm doing this live is so that I can encourage the founders, the entrepreneurs, the leaders that are watching this, that guess what? You get to build legacy. You get to build things that live on after you, that generate revenue after you. But it requires some things. And it requires a lot of things that many founders, especially if you're coming from a corporate space, especially if you're coming from a space where you have to be professional, aren't doing. But you can. You absolutely can. Are you interested? Are you ready? Are you excited? So, like I said, this weekend, I feel like I'm just kind of jumping around, but I'm really not. The one thing I want you to take from where we are right now is that he did things that you can do too. He did things that you can do too. He did things that many of you are doing, and that is so amazing. Give yourself the credit for that. But also there's some amazing things that he did that you may not be doing. In fact, I had to, hard check myself like, Stephanie, are you doing that all the time? I mean, no, I'm going to work on it. I'm finding it. I'm finding it, y'all. So awesome. And thank you for those of you who are tuning in. I don't know what you're on. We're live right now on Facebook, LinkedIn, as well as YouTube. I'd love a comment. If I know who you are, I'd love to say hello, shout you out, acknowledge your business. So whomever's watching, and if you're catching this on the replay, by all means, comment replay and drop any questions or comments that you have. So as I opened earlier, I was telling you that I went to see Michael with one of my really good friends, and Michael is the biggest biopic opening ever at $97 million. And it's not shocking, right? Folks want to know more about his story. People want to know more about his story. Now, I do understand that the Jacksons have a little bit of beef going on, and, Janet wasn't in the movie, and some other things were not addressed. And I get that part, right? I understand everything that you're saying there. But go see the movie, right? Before you cast judgment, go see the movie. I thought it was great. But back to his story. Michael Jackson's story has value, but you don't have to be the king of pop for your story to have value, for what you're saying to have value. And so one of the things that I tell our clients is that if you stand in the middle of the road, you're going to get hit. That's a given. Might take a minute, depending on the level of traffic on that road. But if you stand in the middle, you're going to get hit. Something's going to come by and knock you down. And that's not a good thing, because in order to show up in a way that your story has the opportunity to impact others, possibly create income for you, and be an investment in the legacy that you're hoping to build or that you are building right now as a founder, a business owner, an entrepreneur, or a leader, you've got to be willing to show up fully. And I'm speaking very directly to those of you who have been challenged by the notion of being professional. And so it causes you to get into your content and be buttoned up and let me talk like this because it's professional. And I'm like, listen, I am very capable of being ghetto and bougie and bougetto and whatever the situation calls for. I really don't care. But I'm wearing these nails on top of these tattoos, on top of these piercings, on top of these lips, on top of this hair, because I don't care. I don't have the time to care. See, I involve myself in both attraction as well as repulsion marketing. Take notes, y'all, because I am a professional and I do professional work. I don't have to posture some professional persona. I don't have to do that. And it's so funny because oftentimes my mother will say, "Do you see clients with those nails?" Sure do. Sure do. And I have no rings on today, which is crazy. Usually I have rings all over the place, and it's fine. You know why? Because at this point, if this bothers you, you don't need to be a client. If this bothers you, you don't need to be a student. If this bothers you, you don't need to be in Founder Mind. You need to go find the people whose energy you align with. So, in being fully myself on this camera, on Rihanna's internet, streaming to Mark Zuckerberg's place, and I don't know who owns LinkedIn. His name escapes me, and the YouTube people as well. Streaming to all these different destinations, I don't have to create some buttoned up version of myself so you'll think I'm professional and you'll want to work with me. I could care less. If you think I'm unprofessional, then I'm probably not the professional for you. It's that simple. And so, one of the things that, I talk to our clients and our students about is bringing more of their personality. And when I say bring your personality, that doesn't mean that you have to be wild. You don't have to cuss people out. Everything doesn't have to be like you don't have to develop an alter ego. Just be yourself. Whatever that means. One of the things that I don't do I very rarely show up on camera looking unintentional. And I'll use those words intentionally. Very rarely will you catch me on camera looking unintentional. Now, I may not always look like this. I may have, gloss on or, maybe a ponytail or a hat or something, but I very rarely show up in fact, I don't show up unintentional. I tried it once. I didn't like it because that's not who I am in real life. If you ask any of my friends, they would be like, Stephanie did what? Because I don't show up. One of my girlfriends, and one of my girlfriends in college, I haven't seen her in years, gave me the nickname Diva. I'm gonna tell you how I got that nickname because one day I decided to ask her, "Girl, why do you call me that? Like, are you trying to tell me like I'm dramatic?" And you're like, "What is this backhanded? Because I need to check." And she's like, "No." She's like, "I called you to meet me at IHOP. I think it was probably like 3 o'clock in the morning, and you showed up together. And so I started calling you Diva." Like, I always want to put a level of intention behind how I show up because it makes me feel good. It does. It makes me feel good. And so if I get it. There's some people, they love to do their videos, matter in their eye, sleep in the corners of their mouth, hair all over their head. And that's cool. That's great for them if they feel good that way. I wouldn't feel good that way. And at that point, I'm posturing. I'm faking the funk. Because I know how to, if I didn't want to, curl this hair or whatever, da 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 da, I know how to make that make sense. But I want to come to you and talk to you on these videos and wherever else I am. I want to feel good about how I look. And that means I'm going to be intentional. And that means also sometimes my lips might be blue or they might be green. Or they might be sunset lips. That's something I've been working on. It's kind of like a red and an orange thing going on, right? But my thing is, I need to have main character energy because when I'm honest about it, I spent a vast majority of my life not being the main character. Can I be honest with you guys? Can I be transparent for a moment? If I can, just put yep in the comments. Those of you that are tuned in, thank you so much for being here. Can I be transparent for a moment? So, I spent a vast majority of my life not being the main character, being a supporting character. And I do realize that that is a very cliched term. It's cliched phrasing, oh, be main character energy. But think about what you're saying. The main character, the story is built around them. They are the protagonist, right? The story is built around them. The story is built in such a way that their character arc gives structure to the story. I'm sure there's a better way to say that. Reginald Edmond, if you're watching, and all my other storytellers, feel free to fact check me on this. But the supporting characters are there to augment the story arc of the main character. So if I'm not the main character in my own story, that means that somebody else is writing it. That means I'm letting other people star in my story. On Saturday I had the privilege of being on a podcast with Leilani Moore Anderson, or it might be Leilani Anderson Moore. If y'all forgive me, and if you're watching Leilani, I'm so sorry. But super sweet. I was also a guest with Dr. Michelle Finnick, a very sweet woman, and found out they're both from Houston. But we were talking about people pleasing and how those behaviors contribute not just in your personal life, but in your professional life. And so I will tell anybody who will listen, I am a recovering codependent. I am recovering people pleaser. Why do I say recovering instead of former? Because there's no such thing. There's no such thing. And so part of me being in recovery from those behaviors is being clear about how I show up in my story. I have done myself the disservice of being a supporting character in my story, where the weight of people's opinions and what they thought and will they like me, does he love me, da 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 da, were the main characters. Because remember, the supporting characters exist to support the arc of the main character because the story is built around them. That's why story is so important. And when we look at the story of someone like Michael Jackson, even though, I mean, sure, we know what we know what they show. All right. And no matter how you feel about him, you know what they show. You know what you think. But there he has a story and people are interested in it because he's the main character for most of it. So this is your invitation, right? If you were looking for an invitation, like how do I want to navigate this season of my life? I know a lot of you, it's a new season for whatever reason in your lives. Navigate it as the main character. See the value in your story or stories because you don't just have one. Begin to share that. Begin to show up as you do in your life. It's so funny when sometimes I talk to clients and they'll be so animated and so, what's the word? Just free and transparent in a coaching session or in a strategy session. And then I look at their content. I'm like, where'd they go? Well, I just wanted to make sure I'm professional. If you stand in the middle of the road, you will get hit, and not in the best way. Tell your stories. Tell your story. Be the main character. Show up in all your power. Show up in with your light, burning, glaring, blaring brightly. Blind them. The folks that, if your light is too bright for them, that's okay. 8 billion people on the planet. But if you never show up fully in that light, showing that light, sharing that light, if you're hiding under a bushel, right? Hide it under a bushel. No, I'm gonna let it shine. If you're not gonna let the light shine, then don't be shocked when you start to attract in people who also don't let their light shine and who also get a little teed off because you're letting yours shine just a little bit more. Beware of people that love you in the dark, and you can take that any way you want to. Moving on. So Bruce Sweden, the author of the studio of In the Studio with Michael Jackson, I believe he's an engineer, and I may not have said his name right. He said that collaborators were trained to execute his standard. And remember, I told you earlier that he had a standard, that he wanted things to be a particular way, and that he asked for that because he knew what it was, right? And for the founder watching this, understand that collaborations are, I believe, the unsung superpower of your success. You just have to be careful who you're collaborating with. But for those of you who are operating and you have a team, even if it's a team of two, a more practical application of this is SOPs and organizational culture and codifying policies and protocols, codifying your systems. Because his collaborators were trained to execute his standard, and the he didn't even have to be there. So there was time spent investing in the collaborators. There was time spent allowing them to, as we call it, catch the scent of Michael Jackson, so they could give him what he wanted, what he needed, and what aligned with his standard. Now, this one might hurt a little. You know, it said allegedly that when Michael Jackson died, he was $500 million in debt for whatever reason. And if you know the reasons, please drop them in the comments. But one of the things I really want to say is that a lot of founders fear debt, especially if you're of color. You were brought up that debt is a bad thing. And one of the things that I have said is that, you know, there's a lot of people that talk about funding your business, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm like, if you're a service-based business, unless you are acquiring tangible physical assets, you shouldn't need funding off rip. Now, if you do, we have a contact for that. If you want to know more about funding, put funding in the comments and I'll connect you to him. But ultimately, funding is supposed to allow you, you know, that debt, so to speak. If you hear people talk about, you know, having an Airbnb empire, et cetera, they went into debt to do that. Debt is not inherently bad. Debt becomes bad when we've acquired it and we can't pay for it. And listen, as somebody who has had their fair share of lean seasons, I know what it means to have a debt that you can't pay for. I do. I absolutely do. But I also know that sometimes debts are necessary in taking on debt because it is a calculated risk for your growth. You're doing this for a reason. And that's why I'm so vehemently against those who are in a service-based industry going out and getting funding, even though those people on Rihanna's internet, over on TikTok, have all kinds of ways for you to go into debt off rip. And I don't want you to do that. Especially if you are not, let me say this very clearly, if you are not acquiring physical, tangible assets for the sake of your business. So let's say you're a service-based business, but you need to buy a house or you need to buy a facility. Yes, go into debt. Find funding for that. I mean, in a real world, don't use your money, but that's the advanced lesson. But that's a time when I feel like, okay, if you needed to take on a bit of debt, and I'm using the term loosely, okay, great. I actually don't know why Michael Jackson died $500 million in debt. I don't know. What I do know is that at this point, that $500 million debt is in the rear view. I do know that his mother not only has been endowed with millions, but gets $65,000 a month in a payment from the estate. That's what sources said. News sources have said, right? But, you know, something else that I feel like is really important and how to Michael your brand is love. So interesting. I have on a shirt right now that says love is the answer. I didn't plan that. I just grabbed the first thing I saw, which I kind of need to apologize for this outfit because it's kind of womp womp. But the outfit doesn't matter. I'm here to give y'all a message. So if the message is making sense, just put yep in the comments and I will definitely appreciate that. But Michael was all love. That's what you hear from his collaborators. I recently saw a interview of Teddy Riley, I believe, on Club Shay Shay with Shannon Sharp. And he was talking about, everybody knows Michael's voice to be very soft spoken. Thank you very much. And can you just do this and da 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 da? Which I also think is a trauma response, but we don't have time to dissect that. But what I appreciated and what I saw in This Is It is even the most demanding request he made, it was made with love. Never did he speak harshly to people, never did he degrade them. I don't think people felt like they weren't valued in this process, right? And if I'm honest, that's something I definitely would have to work on because I do know I can get real snippy when I'm not getting what I feel like I need to have. You know? I'm just gonna be honest. Like I'll ask a couple of times and not be snippy, but when I get to that third or fourth time and things just aren't doing what they need, I get a little snippy. I get that part. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I do think that you do have leaders, you do have business owners, you do have founders that haven't quite managed and mastered is the word I want to use. Mastered how to communicate with their people. And I'm here to tell you the quickest way for you to amass negative brand equity. Mind you, we need positive brand equity to leverage against taking you to peak profitability. So the fastest way to amass a cornucopia, a trough, a whatever you want to call it, right? An overabundance of negative brand equity is to mistreat the people in your organization. I don't care if it's one VA and you. I don't care if it's you and 10 analysts, whatever your team makes up. And this is the challenge, right? Because a lot of times founders are high achieving. We're used to being the go-getters. We're used to things going a particular way. We're used to being in control. And one of the things I had to learn as a founder with a team and dealing with people is how to instruct them and correct them with love. Can I still get a little snippy? Yep. Can I dial it back in my head before I let it come out of my face? Yep. Yep. Yep, I can. Can I get snippy with my peers? Absolutely. Absolutely. Have I done it? Absolutely. Can I get snippy with my clients? Well, I try not to. Because to me, there's no reason. Now, I've had some situations where a client got snippy with me and I still didn't get snippy with them. I didn't get as snippy with them as I could have gotten. Yay me. But definitely I think that's something that every founder, every leader, everybody watching this live and on the replay can definitely work on because love is the answer, period. Point blank, period, the end. And I do think learning to assert yourself and not to be aggressive, but to assert yourself by and simultaneously edifying your team, the people that have come alongside this vision to support you is imperative. It's imperative to its success. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The first people to evangelize this brand that you're building, that you always talk about, you're building a brand, should be the people that come in contact with it. If you have a team, it should be those people first. Then come your clients and your customers, then your collaborators, not in any particular order. But if people are within your organization, your business or whatever, talking about how poorly you treat them, good luck and Godspeed. Because that is going to come back to you in horrible ways, especially if it's malicious, which oftentimes it is. You don't accidentally degrade somebody. That's a conscious decision. But I digress. Another way that you can Michael your brand is learn how to not settle. Now, not settling is not perfectionism. Not settling is not perfectionism. It goes back to that question of that standard. It goes back to meeting those expectations that you've set, right? And so going back to the conversation with Teddy Riley, he said that Michael told him to get it. Like there was a sound in the track, there was an energy that he was trying to encapsulate. And he's just said, Teddy, I just need you to get it, that type of thing. And so he didn't settle and say, well, this is not what I want, but, I'm going to go on ahead anyway. I'm going to go on ahead, and take it. Because at some point, I do believe that settling is an energy. And if you get really good at it, it will permeate everything, not just your business, but your life, your relationships. And a lot of times I think people settle because they don't want to I don't want to be doing too much. Sometimes you got to do too much. Because taking it up, just even that little bit, right? It separates you. What is it? It separates the wheat from the shaft, or the wheat from the tare. No, wheat from the shaft. That little bit, right? That little bit of you doing too much can separate what you're doing from what your competitor is doing. But we're not talking about perfectionism. We're not doing that. We're done with perfectionism. We're striving for excellence. We're striving for love because, at the end of the day, again, if you don't care about anything else I've shared today, and this has been a longer live than I intended for it to be, but if you want to know how to Michael your brand, understand that according to most sources, right, Michael communicated his vision clearly. He created it he communicated at a granular level. And I'll be honest that sometimes I need to work on that. My toxic trait is that I don't want to insult anyone's intelligence. And so sometimes I don't get as granular as I need to unless somebody makes that inquiry of me, right? So it's not a bad thing. But the ability to communicate your vision, to take it out of your head and put it into the hands of others who also care for it deeply, who are willing to be galvanized to this vision with you, is a beautiful thing. It's really an honor. It's really an honor for somebody to see value in your vision, be it a team member, a client, a customer, a collaborator, whomever, somebody just sitting across the table, somebody in social media. It really is an honor. And so I don't want you to walk away from this feeling like, oh my God, Stephanie, you just gave me so much to do. No, not really. No, not really. But I think there are some amazing lessons in what Michael Jackson built that you, me, as a founder, as an entrepreneur, as a small business owner, as a leader can take. We can take these lessons and we can put them into practice. And it's a good thing. It's a great thing, actually. Squirrel. Earring squirrel. There we go. All right. But listen, in conclusion, if you have any questions, now would be the time to drop them into the chat. What I took from this is that Michael Jackson always had a vision. He always executed that vision. And he collaborated, but he never collapsed. And I think that's important. Because you can't do what he did by himself. So he had to have collaborators, but not just any collaborator, but he chose to collaborate with people that were at the top of their game or on their way there, because I do believe he did give people some opportunities based on the depth and the breadth of his platform. But he collaborated with people, but he never collapsed. And what I mean by that is that he never settled. He never said, oh, well, yeah, that's fine if that's all you can do. He pushed people. He asked them to go get it. He took them to the brink of their capabilities. He inspired them. I think in a weird way, he made them want to be better, even if they were at the top of their game. And that's a lesson for many of us. You can be at the top of your game and still have places where you can improve. I know that. I hope you know that too. But ultimately, he gave love. And as we all know, he made history. Now, we don't have to get into the news stories and the headlines and all the salaciousness of that. What we do know is that in all things Michael Joe Jackson was the king of pop. I do know exactly where I was when they announced that he had transitioned on June 25th, 2009. And I find it fascinating that his estate has been able, and many celebrities can do this, but his estate went from being in debt to being wildly profitable. And the lessons that it gives to us is that we can set things in motion. No, your business may not do 3.5 million after your death. We get that part. But you can set things in motion. You can set a foundation in place where there are standards, where there are collaborators, where there is an energy that allows people to be better, even if they're at their best. And I want to encourage you to do that. I want to encourage us to do that. We live in a crazy world, people, but love is always the answer. And with that, my name is Stephanie D. McKenzie. You've been watching Breaking the Brand, and this was How to Michael Your Brand. Have a good week.